Okay. Hey, Robin, how are you today?
Hello, I am so good. I'm super excited to be
Good.
here.
Oh my gosh, me too. I'm so glad that we made this happen. I appreciate your flexibility too when I realized, oh yeah, Veterans Day, my kids are going to be home. We got to
Mhm.
shift gears here a little bit. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you being flexible with that.
Oh my gosh, I think that's such a good model for some
Yeah,
healthy boundaries and something I struggle with too, because there's always something to be
I
done or
know.
some work to get done. And I'm trying really hard with my son to be really present when he's home. So I loved that.
Yeah.
It served as a reminder and it made me actually look ahead to the calendar because we have Thanksgiving coming up and
Yeah.
he's out of school the whole week. So I
Oh,
was like,
yes.
I need to
Plan
clear my
ahead.
calendar there.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I know we go to school Monday and then have the rest of the week off. So
Okay.
I'm definitely like, okay, I'm going to try and fit as much as I can into that Monday, but
Hmm.
everything else will have to wait. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think
but
that's like the secret, right? Is like it
mm,
can wait.
it
Sometimes we feel
can.
like it can't, but it's
Yeah.
like nothing's on fire. It's
No.
fine.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, before we jump in, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in. I am Robyn Gutierrez. I am Gosh, so I like to say like where I've come from and what I'm
Hmm.
doing now. So I'm a board certified behavior analyst by trade. I've worked in behavior analysis, working with the autistic community for
Oh,
most of
cool.
my career. Spent
Hmm.
about 17 years doing that work, and in the last year and a half, I have pivoted. And of course, there's been a lot of work that led me to that
Yeah.
pivot. Career coach of my own, a lot of healing journey myself, all of that good stuff. But now what I get the pleasure of doing is holding space for other heart-centered humans. So I
Mm.
am a trauma-informed certified breathwork facilitator. I will also soon be Reiki certified, so bringing
Oh,
some of our
you will.
energy. Yeah, I'm next week I'll be Reiki level 1 and 2 certified.
That's so cool. Okay. Well, look at
Yeah.
that. Gonna
Yeah.
two episodes in a row because Angela's episode will actually air before yours, but then
Okay.
yours will be the next one. So
Yeah.
yeah, our listeners will get to hear that twice. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and for me, I've received Reiki, like I've um enjoyed that as a healing modality, but I've never been the practitioner.
Hmm.
However, from what I understand and from other practitioners that I talk with, there's a lot of overlap between what I get to do as a breathwork facilitator and in Reiki. And I would almost bet to say that one is like an active practice and one's a little bit more passive, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of overlap when we're talking about clearing and balancing the chakras.
Yeah.
So it's been
Yeah.
quite a shift from behavior analysis. I still use a
Yeah.
lot of those principles
Okay.
because you can't forget you can't forget them.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of principles of reinforcement, of shaping, and just
Hmm.
a lot of things that I learned in that trade that I get to use not only in my own life, but with the wonderful humans that I get to support. And there's a kind of a branch of behavior analysis called acceptance and commitment therapy.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
ACT.
Uh-huh.
And that is something that I bring into my practice as well.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's something
Okay.
that I use, and I like to think it's a kind of a holistic, well-rounded approach. And I'm always looking for other things. Like I'm that person that's like, okay, and after Reiki, maybe sound
Right.
healing, and then
Yeah.
what, and then what,
Oh
and
my
then what,
gosh.
right? How many
Same.
tools can I have in my toolbox?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure what we'll get to talk about, through my own healing journey, maybe perhaps through your own, is there's no one size fits all. And it's like, can
Nope.
we all find the tools that really resonate and work with us? And I just want to
Mhm.
have many of them to offer to my clients.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk about all the things with you. And I somehow missed that you also are trained in Reiki, so that's pretty cool. I love that.
I may not have
Um,
even written that down because it's
I
so
don't think you
new, you
did.
know?
I don't think you
Yeah.
did. I was
Yeah.
like,
So
I
that's on
don't
me.
remember that yet. No, you're
Yeah.
totally fine. Um, okay, well, I already told you this, but I'm going to tell my listeners. I heard you on Angela's podcast, the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast,
Hmm.
and I'm going to link that episode in my show notes so that everyone can go back and listen.
Oh, thank you.
But like I ate up every moment of that episode and was like, I think within the first few minutes, I'm like, I got to find this lady and have her on my podcast
Uh, I love
because
that.
yeah, because I just feel like we all have a different perspective based on not only our own stories and our own life experiences that have kind of shaped how we see the world, but then also like the tools that have helped us heal that then affects how we see the world. and then also what we're trained in and what we can
Yeah.
bring back to the world through, different modalities and different strategies and tools, and just to help people heal. And
Yeah.
so, even though I've talked to others on here about breathwork, and I've talked to, Angela about Reiki, they have their own perspective and they have their own story. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, so I was pretty excited and glad that it was really easy for me to find you, because I was like, sometimes it's hard to find people, but you were pretty
Yeah.
easy to find. So,
Oh, I'm so glad. But ironically, I just changed my Instagram name after that. And so now all the podcasts I've done, right, are going to be linked to my old name. But you found
oh,
me right before I did that. And I've
oh,
changed it on
okay.
your form, so it'll be all good. But I'm
Okay.
like, yeah, it is sometimes hard to find people and connect with people. But the universe aligned this for us, and I'm super
That's
happy to
right.
be here.
Yep, and here we are. Yeah. So, um, okay. So first, I would love, like, I am going to have you share about self compassion and what you do as a coach. But I do want to go back in time.
Okay.
What I didn't hear about on the episode I heard with you on Angela's podcast was your whole story, and
Hmm.
you have shared that through, the kind of onboarding process with this podcast, little bits of that. And I would love to talk more about that. So I do want to say, so first of all, I heard a lot of similarities between, my mom and dad were divorced, and my mom was in a relationship that we ended up moving in with him, and ended very badly and really scary. Um, and I don't blame my mom at all. And so
Hmm.
I just want to say, like, I feel like my mom and your mom and any mom that is able to get out of it is so brave.
Yeah.
And like, we don't know what we don't know. And she was doing her very best, just as my
Hmm.
mom was doing her very best. So I just want to put that out there. Like, I don't know your mom, and I don't know
Mm.
you, but just,
Yeah.
from what I read about your story, I just feel like I just want to say very clearly, like, your mom is a brave mama. And, I have such a great relationship with my mom now. And I can imagine that she feels a lot of guilt and shame about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but also, like, it is like, it's part of her journey, and her and
Hmm.
I get to have something so much better now. So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that to start,
I appreciate
because
that. Thank you for
yeah.
naming that. Yeah, that feels really good. That it does feel like we have so many similarities. That really hits home for me.
Yeah, yeah. So as much as you're willing to share, I would love to
Mhm.
hear you share kind of about that piece um of your story.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to because it's not something I've really shared. I mean, I've hinted at it. I've made a few comments here and there. But it's not something that I've really been able to dive in deep or explain as part of my story. And like you said, there's where we're at now, but there's so much history behind that and has
Mhm.
led to these choices and these decisions and this building of self-compassion. And
Yeah.
so if I take myself way back to young Robyn, my parents were divorced when I was 6 years old.
Mhm.
And I don't really actually remember too much of our life before they were divorced. Like I just
Okay.
kind of remember growing up in two different houses. And when my parents were divorced, my mom moved in with a man.
Okay.
And at first, the first couple of years, it was fine.
Mhm.
He was, I think, adjusting to having two children in his house. I have a sister, so
Okay.
my sister and I moved into the home with my mom and with him. And of course, my I still saw my dad, and so we would go back and forth. And I think there was probably a lot of adjustment for everyone throughout that process. Both
Yeah.
my parents navigating the divorce, navigating co-parenting, grief of separation, all of those things that, of course, my 6-year-old mind had no clue,
Yeah.
except what I was experiencing was a lot of back and forth, a lot of um, I remember feeling a lot of disconnect between both houses, not really
Mhm.
feeling settled in either place.
Mm. Mhm.
And I think over time, as this man got really comfortable in a bonus parent, step parent kind of role, he maybe I mean, this is all my perspective, right? Like he
Sure. Yep. That's
probably
fair.
started seeing where he had a little bit more power,
Yeah.
more power over my mom, seeing that she was, healing and hurting and navigating all of these things. And so it was like little by little, like I can't really pinpoint when did the abuse start because
Sure.
we moved around a lot. Even that home, I went to like 6 elementary schools. Maybe I'm
Oh,
exaggerating, at least 5.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
went to a lot. Like we would just move around a lot. So there's again a lot of like unsettled, unsteady kind of just home nature there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it was about in my junior high years where the abuse started being a little bit really like more apparent. And I saw it with my sister first more than myself. So a little
Okay.
bit more targeting her, kind of just treating her poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowly started to creep into like how he was treating my mom and maybe eventually myself. I sort of feel like maybe I was the last one. And it
Okay.
could be that I didn't acknowledge it or I didn't
Sure.
recognize it in the moment. Or maybe it was I was such a protector because I've always had this like empathetic heart. I've
Mhm.
always kind of looked after others really at the expense of myself. So now that I'm saying this, like
The
maybe it was
peacekeeper.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And I still navigate through like, ooh, conflict. Inner
Oh, that's not
child doesn't
comfy. Yep.
like that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And how can we make this go away? And how can I make it all better? And so, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think that maybe I didn't recognize it for a while because probably junior high, really in high school. And when I got in junior high and high school, I think one of the first signs that my house was unsteady and unstable was I wanted to be anywhere but there. And
Oh,
so I
mm,
actually had a really great friend whose family essentially took me in. I wouldn't say I lived there because I didn't like
mhm,
move my stuff in, but I essentially lived there. They let me
mhm,
spend the night multiple nights in a row. They fed me, they dropped me off at school. Like I felt like I was truly a part of her family.
mm,
And when I would have to go home, there was just this
yeah.
like unsettling feeling. I didn't want to be there, but at the same time, I didn't want my mom to be there either,
Yeah.
right? To
Oh,
be there
yeah.
unprotected.
Yeah.
Not that I could do anything, but of
Yeah.
course, that's like a lot of pressure for a child
Mhm.
to feel these sort of feelings. My sister, I was the peacekeeper. My sister was probably the one that was like, forget all this stuff. She ran
Yep.
away. She created more
Okay. Yep.
havoc.
Mhm.
She was like, we're not doing this. Like, she was more like, I'm putting boundaries in place and I'm going to stand up for myself. And at the
Yeah.
time, I was like, we're going to get in trouble. Like, can you be
Yeah.
good? Like, we're going to get in so much trouble. We're going to get hurt. We're going to, something's going to
Oh,
happen. And, she just didn't stand for it. And I love that about her now. Like, I
yeah.
just love that
Yeah.
she's kind of like, I don't know BS. Like, I'm
Uh-huh.
not putting energy in my life that doesn't belong there. And I don't know, for me, it took a long time. And again,
Mhm.
probably because I'm like, can we all just get
I know.
along? And yeah, so the abuse over time started, it started emotionally, kind of emotional abuse, verbal abuse. There was never physical abuse towards me. There was
Okay.
physical abuse towards my mom. But what really became evident as my high school years were coming to an end and as I was getting ready to move out, and it was, again, as I'm talking about this perspective, it was probably like he was realizing I'm losing my power,
Losing. Yep. Yeah.
right? I don't have the kids are leaving. My sister was
Yep.
already gone by this point because she's 2 years older than me. So she moved out the second she could.
Mhm.
Um, Also in high school, once that friend, I still had that friend in my life, but then I had a boyfriend in high school and I stayed with them. So like again, I was like never
Never.
home.
Mhm.
And then yeah, about 17, 18, maybe 19, it's kind of all a blur around those years, was when gun violence started to
Mm.
become prevalent in the home.
Oh gosh.
So there was threats of not being able to make it out alive. I have a vivid memory of army crawling on the ground because this man was paraplegic too.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
he was often bedbound and used the guns, used the threats to hold power over us.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
probably could clearly sense that we were scared.
Mhm.
My mom clearly scared for her life. And I think felt pretty trapped in that situation. And yeah, I just remember that army crawl. And that
Mhm.
was the moment that I told my mom, we cannot do this. Like,
Yeah.
whether it's a threat or like there's validity to it, like we don't need to stick around and find out, right?
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly, like we definitely got out of that situation. There was a lot of police reports. There was a lot
Yeah.
of the neighbors heard things and they would like kind of check in but stay out of it too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, not,
Don't
I
wanna
don't know
be
what to
those.
do,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
but kind of just like do a little welfare check, make sure we're good. And so there was a period of time where it was just my mom in the house. I had gotten out, my sister had gotten out, and I never really returned. Like I didn't want to go back to that. But I remember one specific day I was driving home from Las Vegas. I lived in LA at the time, so it was like a 3 hour drive. I was with a friend. I must have been 19 or 20 at this time, maybe 21, I don't know. Again, what is time?
I know,
It's all a blur,
right? I
honestly.
know.
But around these years, I get a call from my mom, and she is sitting at the police station, and she's
Oh,
ready. She's finally ready
oh,
to leave, and she doesn't know what to do because her everything is there. And
yeah.
like not just her stuff, but like her life, her
Her whole life.
childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her ability to work remained like in that home. So
Yeah.
walking away would mean like completely starting fresh and starting over. But she was finally ready, and she had tolerated enough of the abuse to sit in the police station. Um, for long enough for me to get back from Las Vegas. And I just remember that drive. I was with a friend, my friend named Sarah, and
Mm.
she was driving, and I was like, "Can you go faster? Like,
Yeah.
like I just need
Like,
to get to my mom."
yeah.
And of course she couldn't, right? But I got there as soon as I could, and I think we sat there for another 3 hours or so because it was like a total of six
Crazy.
hours. The bench there was so cold; it was like a
Oh,
marble or granite kind of like surface quartz, maybe. So it was like cold. We had nothing with us. And I just remember like leaning on my mom leaning on me, and I was like, this is the right thing. Like it's
mhm.
scary, but like this is it. We're going to start over.
Yeah.
And it was good. I don't know what took them so long. I think no officer is super excited to walk
I
into a
know.
domestic violence situation. So I think that that's probably what, maybe caused a delay on their end, make sure
Mm.
they had enough coverage and support. And the unfortunate thing is, I mean, it's all water under the bridge now, but as we journeyed back to like get a few things that my mom could take with her that we could fit in our cars, um, this man's a narcissist. So in the time that the police were with him and we were not, he had completely swayed them
Yeah.
that he was the
Yeah.
victim and we are at fault, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
my mom was also his caregiver, so they
Oh,
came
wow.
after they kind of threatened that this could be caregiver abuse
Oh my
for neglecting
gosh.
him. Yeah, it was a
Ew, that's
lot.
gross.
Yeah. It was, and
Oh,
I'm a young adolescent, a young
yeah.
adult, I guess, at this point, and I'm just like, what is
Is happening.
happening?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of where all of that came from. Like my childhood trauma really
Hmm.
stemmed from. And of course, it continued throughout the years. And I'm sure we'll touch base on
Hmm.
that. But I think this is where I really saw resilience. And I don't think my mom would have named it at the time, but I
Yeah.
do think she had a lot of self-compassion. And I think that she really tried to build herself back up. I mean, she's a woman of major resilience. She has been like, I know life will life you, but she went through this. She obviously had her history before that.
Yeah.
And, she's lost her home in the Paradise Fire back in
Oh my
2018. So like
gosh.
just life continues to life her. And now
Oh,
she's living her best life and
yeah.
super resilient and definitely an inspiration for me.
Yeah. Yay, mama.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's doing well now.
She's doing well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure
Good.
she still carries her trauma from
Yeah.
all of this experience and then add on the things that life continued to layer on the chapters. But she's happy and she's living a
Yeah.
vibrant life now. And that's what's
Good.
really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so then you find yourself kind of in a pattern of this in your own relationship and marriage.
Hmm.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to name like my marriage wasn't abusive in the sense of gun violence or
Sure.
domestic violence or anything
Sure.
like that. I think what ended up happening was, I guess I'm kind of processing this out loud too. I think I've always been codependent in
Okay.
relationships,
Yeah.
and perhaps it was this situation that kind of provoked some of that kind of need for like security or having someone who can protect me, keep me safe. I didn't want to be alone,
Yeah.
um, and so I. I think that in my marriage, it was a good marriage to start, but I was so young. I was 24. I know this age. I was 24 years old when I met
Mhm.
him. And I hadn't processed all of that, right? I
Mm,
had just gotten through it. Like it was
mhm.
true
Yeah,
survival.
yeah.
And then we made it out, and it's like, okay, we're still alive. This man is no longer in our life. We will not allow him to be in our life. We don't know where he is, nothing
Mhm,
about him, never want to see him again, right? And didn't process all of that, and then go
mhm,
straight into college, navigate college, getting ready to go in grad school. I meet my husband, my soon to be husband, who's now my ex-husband,
mhm.
at that time, and just kind of dive in head first into a relationship without doing a lot of healing work, without
Yeah,
really knowing who I was, but
yeah,
really doing what society told me to do, right?
yeah,
You go to school, you buy a house, you find a partner, you have a child, you get a dog. Like I did all
yeah.
those things.
Mhm.
And then when there was a disconnect in that relationship, of course, over time, we were together for 10 years.
Okay,
We were together for 5, married for 5, and then
okay.
divorced right around that 10-year mark. And I truly think that it really boils down to um, I didn't do a lot of work on myself, didn't really
Yeah,
know what my values were. And I didn't recognize as a 24-year-old woman that sometimes you could have values that are in alignment, but if we're not growing together,
yeah.
then we're going to grow apart, right?
Mhm.
Essentially. And throughout that relationship, there at the very end, my son was born. And about 3 months in, I found out that my ex husband was having an affair. And
Mm,
there was a lot of sandbagging, a lot of gaslighting throughout that
mhm.
process. And that was a little bit messy. And I was 3 months, three to 6 months postpartum. And I will admit, I was very
Yeah,
hormonal. I
yeah,
think I had
sure.
probably some undiagnosed postpartum
Postpartum.
depression,
Mhm. Yeah,
and didn't really know who I was as a person anymore. And all of a sudden, my life was falling apart even further.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's where that ended. And just like my mom, I'm now living a happy, vibrant life. So, like, I don't
yeah,
want the listeners to be like, oh, this all sounds super sad. It's just a part of my story and it's a part
totally.
of my journey. And
Yeah,
I'm so grateful for every step of the way, even though it was hard and it was
yeah,
difficult.
yeah,
It all laid the foundation for where I'm at now. And I think I'm living a super vibrant life. I like to think that I'm thriving, not just surviving like I was for most of my adult life.
yeah. Yeah, so you get through that. You then have this medical trauma that you're
Hmm.
like, "I think I'm not gonna make it through this." But you do.
Hmm.
Um, that's the happy ending, right? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have COVID, and COVID
Yeah.
is a whole thing for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like these things just like stacking, stacking, stacking. At what point did you finally say, "Okay, I need to work on me?" And and
Yeah.
and then what did you do?
Yeah. Love that question. I just want to go back to what you said about the medical trauma because I didn't mention that. I forgot that I forgot. Like there's so many things.
Yeah.
Because yeah, 1 year post-divorce, I had an ovarian cyst rupture and I had about 1.5 liters of blood in my abdomen, and the hospital attempted to send me home.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so
You're like, "No."
yeah, and you know what? In hindsight, I got my needs across, right? But I do wish that I was a little bit more, I use my voice a little bit more. I think
Mhm.
that even in that situation, I was like, this is what the professionals are telling
Mhm.
me. But
Mhm.
I knew my body and I knew something was wrong. I mean,
Mhm.
not only that, I looked like I was 9 months pregnant again. I was like, there's
Mm,
something
not right.
wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, like this is not normal. And I just gave a look and the doctor said, you don't want to go home? And I said, I'm not leaving.
Mhm.
And they, after a series of tests, I was there again, 11 p.m. at night. I went into emergency surgery by 8 a.m. But throughout that process, doing one test after another, and there's the wait time in between. They're like,
Mhm.
the CAT scan didn't show anything, the blood work doesn't show anything. They did an EKG, it doesn't show anything. And then they were like, how about we do an x-ray? And I was like, whatever you got to
Yes.
do. And the
Yeah.
x-ray showed that I had 1.5 liters of blood bursted
Mhm.
in my abdomen. And they're like, so you're going in for emergency surgery. And I had just asked I'm a single parent at this point too.
Yeah.
So I had my mom, lived about 40 minutes away. And I was like, can you come get my son? He's here at the hospital with me. I
Oh
need
my
you
God.
to take him home so that, he's not here.
Yeah.
And can you drop him off at daycare? I'm trying to communicate with my ex-husband to pick him up, but it's the middle of the night. So he didn't answer
Yeah.
his phone. He did respond in the morning and, of course, took over at that point. But like, I remember even my battery on my phone was like at 3%. And I was
Oh,
like, this is an emergency.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, yeah, all of these things. Then
Stress.
COVID happens,
Hmm.
and I'm also in a job that, while I thought it was my everything, I'm feeling very disconnected
Hmm.
from my purpose and my why. One of the things about the work that I did as a behavior analyst is, um, I worked directly with the autistic community for so long, and then I got more skills. I got to be really good at my job and I got more responsibility. I moved further up into management. And for me, like management's clearly needed in different industries. For
Yeah.
me, that is not where my passion lies.
Yeah.
And it just really moved me away from my purpose. I felt extremely disconnected from
Yeah.
like, this is
The
not what
work.
I went to school
Yeah.
for.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that's when I was like, enough's enough. And I always say that I started with a career coach, but that's not actually true. Right after my surgery, I started with a nutrition coach. And that's
Okay.
when I was like, something's got to give. I'm not feeling super healthy. My mindset was not good
Hmm.
and I needed help.
Hmm.
And that was the hardest step was one, the investment, because I know
Hmm.
people don't want to necessarily invest in themselves and it's scary when you
Hmm.
don't know what's on the other side of it. But I knew that I needed help. And so asking for help, that was the first step. And I had such a great experience. I loved it. I loved being coached because it just felt like, oh, there's these goals and these
Hmm.
objectives, which is what I love. I'm kind of a goal getter. I love chasing goals.
Yeah.
I would say now I love chasing values more than goals.
Yeah.
And worked with this incredible nutrition coach and excuse me. And then from there, just started being like, this is what I'm doing. And the next coach that I hired was a career coach. And I was like,
Okay.
gosh, at this point, I must have been 35 years old. I was
Okay.
like, maybe 36. And I'm like, I thought I knew what I wanted to do when
I
I grew
know,
up,
right?
right?
Turns out.
Yeah. But I need help again figuring it out.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really great decision because what that career coach did for me was really help me identify what are my strengths and how can I
Hmm.
use those strengths in a role that will fulfill me and that will support my livelihood.
Yeah.
And everything at the end of that lended itself to like just being a life coach. And I don't mean just being a life
Yeah.
coach,
No,
but
I get
being a
it.
life
Yep.
coach.
Yep.
And I just mean it's evolved since then.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where to get started. That felt terrifying.
Hmm.
I'm going to leave my corporate salary that's stable
Oh,
to
wow.
nothing.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Scary.
I did the work. I did the
Hmm.
work. I went inward. I continued to find healers, whether it was Reiki,
Okay.
whether it was breath work was a
Okay.
huge part of my journey. Let's see what else I did. I hired a business coach and
Okay.
I also hired a mentor. So I looked for the people who had walked the path before me.
Hmm.
I listened to a podcast every day on my lunch break
Hmm.
when I was still working my corporate job. That was one thing. I always had a lunch break. And so I'd walk around the park and I put in To Be Magnetic. And
Is that the name of the podcast?
yep, the name of the
Okay.
podcast.
I'll link it.
And
Yep.
I loved that podcast because it was all about neuroplasticity, neuroscience,
Oh, so
and
interesting.
manifestation. So it was kind of a
Sure.
blend
That's
of
cool.
it was so amazing because I came from behavior analysis and I'm like, oh, I need the science.
Yeah.
But it was where the science and the woo kind of met.
Mix. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just loved it. And it was all about hearing people's stories and finding your expander. So people who have walked the path before you, people who have done what you want to do, showing your subconscious what is possible. And so I was like, okay, from here on out, I'm going to just keep putting expanders in my corner. I
Yeah.
found another behavior analyst, Jocelyn, who had done this work before me. And I met her on Instagram and I just kind of started stalking her, to be
Yeah.
honest. I was a fangirl
Yeah.
and got to know her a little bit through Instagram. And then one day I took the leap and she didn't even offer a coaching program, to be honest. I just asked her, would you mentor me?
Mhm.
And she said yes. And
That's
so
so
we
cool.
we did
Good
that
for
for
you.
all of 2023. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that felt really good. I love her so dearly. She's still in
Mhm.
my life and rooting me on, my biggest cheerleader. And yeah, then hired a business coach. And I feel like from there, it's just continuing to put people in my life that we share values, we're kind of like-minded, and they show me what's possible. I
Yeah.
love learning from other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important for us to learn from other people.
Yeah.
Like we can
Yeah.
never be we should never be in a space where we think we have it all and know it all and everyone can come to me for the answers, right? Like,
Right?
nope,
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
be there. No.
I actually started telling my clients recently, I don't know anything, actually. You know everything about
Yeah.
you. I'm going
Yeah.
to help guide you back to
To
yourself.
find
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what feels really good to me is offering mentorship, being a space holder and
Mhm.
helping people reclaim their power because we
Mhm.
all are so powerful and we've all had life happen. I'm sure as listeners are hearing my story, maybe some of it resonates, maybe it's
Yeah.
different, but we all have a story and we've
Yeah.
all gone through trauma.
Yeah. I know, right? I was just talking to my husband about that last night. Like, even if you have a 0 on the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, even if you never had any of those, you've still had stuff. Like,
Mhm.
nobody is free from some sort of adversity that shapes who we are and
Right.
how we see the world and how we have our own experiences, right? Like,
Right.
nobody's
Yeah.
free from that.
Right. That
Um,
is the human experience. That's what
mhm,
we came here to experience and we get to
mhm.
experience. And I think that's where self-compassion comes in is for so long just pushing away the discomfort, right? Like, if I just avoid, if I just put that discomfort in a box and pretend like it's not there, it doesn't exist. But when we learn to be compassionate to ourselves and to others,
Yeah.
we can better tolerate the discomfort. Just yesterday, I went on my Instagram and I was telling the people,
Yeah.
my people,
My
gosh,
peeps.
you guys, I'm feeling funky today. And I just did a somatic practice because I don't know why, but and of course my body I wanted to be like, I want to be happy. I want to be like this vibrant. I want to be,
Mhm.
but I don't get to be that 100% of the time. I get to notice, I get to treat myself with kindness. I get to do what works, use the tools that I know support me and reclaim my power. I truly like visualize getting back in alignment with my central
Mm,
channel.
mhm. That's so cool. Okay, so tell me, like, a lot of my listeners are parenting or have kids in their lives that have experienced some adversity or have some sort of trauma in their lives, and they're trying to navigate that healing piece while still being amazing parents. And so, talk to me about what it would look like for a mama, for you to work with a mama who is trying to reclaim her compassion and her self-compassion and be able to like trust herself again because I think we lose
Mhm.
that sometimes when we've
Yeah.
been through so much. What does
Yeah.
that look like for you to coach someone? I'm actually asking moms or dads specifically because that's what
Yeah.
my people are.
Mhm.
What would that look like?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love supporting caregivers, moms, dads. I will say I need to do a better job of like niching down. I know that. But the people that I'm calling in are mostly moms, mostly
Okay.
caregivers. And I think it's like we can relate. I'm a mom, I'm a caregiver. I've
Yeah.
been through a lot
Yeah.
of this. I'm navigating co parenting and custody situation and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. And I would say that the process generally looks different for everyone because I'm going to individualize it, but the tools and the framework are the
Okay.
same. So we're going
Yep.
to identify your values. I think first and foremost, like what's important to you. You
Mm-hmm.
said something just now that went, like, yes, you nailed it. Of this is something that I think parents, maybe new parents, struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And, society has told us like, we don't know who we were a woman, we're still a woman, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we become a mom or dad,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, it's like figure out who you are now in that role and
Yeah.
come back when you can be productive. Come back when you can contribute to
Yeah.
society in a certain way. And so I think we get kind of put in a different category and like it's like okay, now what's important to me now,
Mm-hmm.
who am I, where am I going, what am I doing with my
Mm-hmm.
life?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it all comes down to values identification. And
Mm-hmm.
those values can shift throughout our life. And I always encourage the people that I work with to hold your values loosely, but
Mm-hmm.
define it firmly.
Okay.
So if, for example, connection is super important to you, what does
Yeah.
that look like?
Mhm.
What does it feel like? How can you get more of it? How do you know when you're disconnected? And
Mm.
so we'll do, a values-based assessment, figure out what those values are, and talk through like what is moving you closer towards those values and what is
Mhm.
moving you away from that. And a lot of times it's our experiencing, both our mental
Yeah.
experiencing, the thoughts that get in the way, the limiting
Yep.
beliefs, the shoulds, the shoulds, the
Ugh,
can'ts,
yeah.
all of those things. And sometimes it's our actual environment. And it's like, what are we doing to move us closer to what's important? And what are we doing that moves us away? And I think sometimes just noticing is
Yeah.
the first step. So can we be an observer to that? And we can better do that when we know what's important to us.
Yeah.
Without a target, it's hard to kind of keep making shifts. And I think if you're not really clearly defined on your values, that's probably when you're living more in just survival mode. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
literally trying to survive the
Get
day.
through the day. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, and kinda dreading it too, right?
Yeah.
Like, hour by hour, like, "Okay."
Mhm.
I mean, I talk to so many moms and they're like, "I love 7 p.m.
I
My
know.
kid's asleep."
Bedtime is the best.
Right?
Yeah.
They love that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Great, what can we do during that hour that feels really
Mhm.
good and fills your cup?" But then how do we bring that in? How can we embed that throughout more
Mhm.
of your day? And it's all values-based decisions and treating ourselves with kindness and compassion. I think when we start saying things out loud, when someone's holding space for us, you start to hear these thoughts that are in your head out loud, and you're like, I didn't even know I was thinking that."
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can ask yourself, like, how is that thought serving me? How can I make changes to this thought? What would I tell a friend who is experiencing this? Because we're
Yeah.
all
That's so
heart-centered
good.
humans, right?
Yep.
And no one I know, no one yet has said, "Well, I would tell them, 'Suck it up, get
I know,
over
right?
it.'"
So why are we telling ourselves that?
Right? But again, we've
Ugh.
grown up in a society where that has been what we've heard. "Suck it up, buttercup. Be a big
Yeah.
girl, don't cry." Like, we're not
Yeah.
allowed to feel our feelings. And
Mhm.
so that's all like the mindset, acceptance, and commitment therapy type of work that I would do with someone. But I
Okay.
think the real um, magic happens in the embodiment piece, really feeling our feelings and not
Mhm.
just labeling our feelings, not just saying, "I think I feel sad." Can we
Mhm.
actually feel it and allow it to dissipate through our body? And we can do that through breath work.
Yeah, do you mean like where am I feeling it in my body?
Yeah.
Is
Where am I
that
feeling it? What does it feel like? What
okay?
sensations are present?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
okay.
think when we're not doing that, we're probably just labeling it and not actually feeling it.
Yeah,
And feeling it is really important. Feeling it is what allows us to feel really good too. So when we
yeah,
can feel the sadness, when we can feel the disappointment, when we can feel anything that's uncomfortable, we can better feel the things that feel good and we don't have to chase those as much anymore.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the caregivers I work with are in that space of survival and
Mhm.
just taking it one day at a time because, parenting kids from hard is hard.
Yeah.
And, it's hard. I have one child who we have adopted, and I work with families who have 6, 7, 8 kids. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time with
Yeah.
one, and you have 8 times that.
Yeah.
So we're in this space sometimes of just like, I'm just literally trying to make it to bedtime.
Mhm.
So for those people who are in that space and are working out of it, but it doesn't happen overnight, what is something we can do in that moment? Like today, what is something I could do today, even just for 5 minutes that can help?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question, and I love that you highlighted, like, they're working out of it because it's not overnight. There's no
Yeah.
quick fix to any of this. It takes time, and we're all on this journey. Even myself, like, I'm not at the destination, right? I
Hmm.
just am on the
Yeah.
journey, and I'm trying to enjoy the journey. And so what I would say to those caregivers is, can you find 5 minutes to pause? To just pause.
Yeah.
I think there's so much power in the pause, and that sounds simple. So
Hmm.
often I get pushback from that. I get, "Oh, Robyn, you want me to pause and breathe?" Yes, yes, I
Hmm.
do. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Get some oxygen to your brain and take a moment and be an observer because we can't come at anything when we're escalated. And I think that's
Hmm.
what happens so often to caregivers is we're constantly needed, right? Like someone's
Yep.
always at I mean, you can't go to the bathroom
I know,
without
right?
being
Yeah.
followed,
Mhm.
right? And so someone always needs a piece of you. And so, of course, it's easy to forget to put yourself first or even take care of your basic needs because it's like, well, I got to do this, this, this,
I
this.
know.
But when you pause and you notice, you can come at it from a more regulated standpoint. And also, you're slowly letting the pressure out. I'm doing this with my hand. I don't know if the
Yeah.
listeners would see that.
Yeah.
But like, imagine a teapot and the pressure is building, 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 building throughout
Yeah.
the day. If we don't release the air and let the pressure out of the teapot, it's going to blow up. And
Yeah.
that's what happens to so many parents that I work with because they didn't take the time to
Yeah.
pause throughout the day and to just check in. How am I feeling right now? What if you're feeling really good? That feels great. I want to check in. I'm feeling
Yay, sit in that.
great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or, I'm a little bit uncomfortable or my stomach hurts or I'm
Mhm.
thirsty or like, what are my needs? Pausing
Mhm.
allows you to do that. And so I think that's like the lowest hanging fruit. It's simple enough to do. And I say simple enough from the sense of like we all have the ability to do it. I don't
Mhm.
mean that, oh, you can just start doing it and it's going to be
Mhm.
flawless. It's going to take some practice. And I would
Mhm.
say find an accountability buddy, find another parent
Oh,
that you're
yeah, that's
like,
a good point.
hey,
Let's do
I'm
this
going to
together.
practice
Mhm.
pausing. Can we check in with each other at the end of the day or at the end of the week, whatever works for you? But find someone who's going to support you on that journey and that you can kind of reciprocate that support with. It builds common humanity, reminds us none of us are alone.
Yeah.
And that's what starts to
Connect.
build self compassion too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are trauma informed, right? I didn't
Hmm.
make that up. No, you are.
Yeah, I
Okay.
am. Yeah.
So why is this so important for individuals who have experienced trauma?
To work with a trauma
Yeah.
informed
Mhm.
facilitator, because we don't want to recreate any trauma, right? And I
Mhm.
and I don't think that as humans we can guarantee that trauma would not be recreated. But when you're working with a trauma informed facilitator or coach or trauma informed
Mhm.
practitioner, they're going to take steps to make sure that you have safety established in
Mhm.
your body before
Mhm.
you really start processing any of this stuff, before you start
Mhm.
dissipating any of the discomfort. We're going to make sure that you feel safe and supported. And titration is so important. That's
So big.
huge to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to me for the first time and, of course, we're going to talk about what are the big goals, but guess what? Day one, we're not going there. Day
Yeah.
one, we're going to set some really small, objective, achievable goals that then we can celebrate because
Mhm.
that signals to us like we did it. We
We
can
did it. Yeah.
celebrate. And yeah, again, titration so that then over time we get to layer on and stack on. And your practitioner, your coach, whoever is working with
Mm.
you who's trauma informed will know when you're ready, and a lot of that is done through collaboration too. So
Mhm.
I don't ever approach a client and say this is what I'm going to have you do. It's here's some of my thoughts as I'm hearing you talk. Let me reflect some of this back to you. How does this land with you? Getting some buy-in and some really collaboration is
Yeah.
huge in
Yeah.
trauma informed care.
Yeah. That's cool. I like that what you're doing is trauma informed because it's just like I mean it really is with anything, whether it's coaching or a therapy, modality or whatever. If there's great therapists out there, there's great coaches out there, but not everyone's trauma informed. And I think
Hmm.
that piece is so important, especially for my crowd that's listening to this. Like we can't miss that part. We have to make
Yeah.
sure that when we're moving forward in healing, that we also are working with people who understand trauma, because
Hmm.
we don't want to cause more trauma
Hmm.
than we need
Yeah.
to unintentionally.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's huge.
um
And yeah.
yeah. um okay, I just looked at the clock and realized we got to wrap this up.
It's so
I
fun though.
know. I'm so sorry because I just feel like we could keep talking, which, we're friends now, so we can talk
Yeah.
anytime.
I love that. I love that. That's what I love so much about social media is
I know.
social media could be really draining in all transparency,
Yeah,
but it's so fun to connect with so many different people that we would have never
I
come
know.
across in a different capacity. So I love that and that we're using it to be social.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's one of the silver linings of the hard that comes with social media.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. But I
So
love it. Let's focus on the good.
yeah, I selfishly will say, well, now you're my friend, so I can talk to you anytime. And my
Yes.
listeners will have to just be like, they'll have to come find you, which I
Yeah.
will, put all of the ways to find you, Instagram, your website, all of that. in the show notes so that people can be your friend too, just like me.
I would love that.
But before we do wrap it up, I always like to ask my guests 3 resources that you would recommend to my listeners.
Oh gosh. Okay. I can't remember what I put
That's
on the
okay.
onboarding.
Yep. Yep.
So, off the top of my head, I'm going to name a book that changed my life. It's The
Okay.
Happiness Trap by Russ Harris.
Okay.
And I think that this is such a good foundational understanding of acceptance and commitment therapy that is written in layman's terms and gives you tools to work with. So, as I
Oh,
was
I love
talking
that.
about, are you
Hmm.
moving away? Or are you moving towards what
Hmm.
matters? There's like visuals for that, and there's
Oh, cool.
exercises. So, I would recommend that.
Okay.
I think podcasts, so they're already
I
listening to your
love.
podcast.
Yep.
So,
Hopefully. No, I'm
yeah.
just kidding.
But I think podcasts can be so
Yeah.
amazing, right? Because
Yeah.
like that podcast changed my life, and now I love listening to podcasts. And I don't drive as much anymore these days, and I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, I'd love to go for a drive so I could
I
listen to
know,
a good
right?
podcast.
What are some
Um,
of your favorites?
okay, so right now, I mean, I love Mel Robbins'
I
podcast.
know, same.
So yeah, I love that one. To Be Magnetic, I still listen
Okay.
to. So I know you'll link
I'll
that
look that one
one.
up.
I
Yep.
think that one's so good. And it's not necessarily, just for caregivers, but I
Yeah.
think if you're a caregiver who is really on this healing journey and trying to rewire these neural pathways,
Yeah.
it's
It's
gonna be a
important.
game changer for you.
Hmm.
So I would say
Okay,
start
cool.
there. And then the third, can I invite listeners into my self-love club?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Tell
so
us
I
about
would
it.
love to invite you into that. It's a totally free community to join. I host
Okay.
a virtual club once a month. It's typically on the last Thursday of the month, but I like to be careful and just say it's on a Thursday of the month because
Okay.
like
Just in case.
Thanksgiving
Oh,
is
yeah.
gonna throw it
Thanksgiving's a
off.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, so there's a few months where we move it around, but for
Okay.
the most part, it's on the last Thursday of the month at 12 p.m. Pacific. And
Okay.
what I encourage people to do when they come to this club is come for as long or as little as you would like. So it's scheduled for an hour. Some people are like, well, it's in the middle of my workday, and I get it. But maybe you could come for your lunch break. Can you take
Yeah.
30 minutes for you where you're connecting with community, like-minded community? I do have a lot of people who have been part of this club. I'm going on my 10th month of hosting this club, which feels
Yay.
really good.
Congrats. That's
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah. And I'm like, people are showing up. People are
Yeah.
craving connection. And in
Yes.
fact, in one of my second or third clubs, I was like, you know, gosh, I want to make sure I'm delivering. Like, what do people
Hmm.
want? And so we did a little values assessment, and I did a word cloud. Connection was huge across that
Hmm.
word cloud. And I'm like,
Hmm.
this is what people want.
It
And so,
is.
first and foremost, that need's going to be met. If this resonates with you and you're like, I'm looking for connection with like minded humans
Hmm.
who are navigating parenthood, who are just navigating being a human,
Life.
learning to
Yeah.
build self compassion, self love, this is a place for you.
Okay.
You don't even have to come every month. Come when you can. It's open every month. I have a
Okay.
link so you can directly add it to your calendar. So, because I know for me, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So we can get it on your
Yeah. No,
calendar.
same. Yeah.
And we do
How
a
do
lot
we
of different
join?
things.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped the gun there.
Oh, no, no,
I'm
that's a
so
great
excited
question.
about it.
Yeah. Well, so follow me on Instagram because my link will be
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, and you could also email me. Like if, for example, if a listener is not on Instagram, they
Yeah.
can email me with which you'll probably put in the show notes as
Yeah,
well.
I
But
will.
okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yep. Okay.
And we do a lot of fun stuff at this. Like every club's a little bit different because it's like come as you are and what do we
Yeah.
need? So I
Yeah.
like to go into it agendaless, to be honest.
Cool. Yeah.
Um,
Keep it kind of open
yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah, but we celebrate our wins. We share some gratitude. Next month, for example, we're going to do a little manifestation circle, which
Cool.
has no definition other than can we all come together and raise the collective vibration? So if, so and so is manifesting that they get this dream job, can we all put our effort and energy into
Into that.
manifesting
Yeah.
that and breathing through that for a song
Yeah.
with that person and giving everyone the opportunity to do that? We've done breath work in there before. We've just
Cool.
done venting in there before, to be honest.
That's
We've
so
done,
helpful sometimes.
yeah, like we
Hmm.
just gotta release that
Hmm.
teapot, like I was
Hmm.
talking about. So I'd say
Yeah.
these three things to get you
Okay.
started.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you. Those are great. Well,
of
yeah, I
course.
will link everything that we talked about in the show notes as well as how to find you, how to join. Oh, shoot. I already forgot what it's called. Self Love Club.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
that
if
will all
you,
be in there.
I got my
Oh
self-love
my
club
gosh, how cute
sticker.
is
Yeah,
that?
it's
Look
a real
at
thing.
you. Stickers. I love stickers.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay. So I'll link all of that. And I just appreciate again you being vulnerable and sharing and I also just want to reiterate how brave your mom is because
Mhm.
it just takes one step to move in that direction so then future generations can keep moving in that direction. So,
Exactly. Oh, I love that
yeah.
so much. Thank you for
Yeah.
giving me a platform to share this story, and that
Yeah.
was really helpful for me too. Some of those things I've never said out loud, so it was really
Yeah.
helpful to process. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, of course. Well, I hope you have an amazing weekend,
You too.
and I'm going to stop recording.
Okay, thank you.